for the glory!
Hi, I'm Becky Rose Dungeon Girl, and today I'm going to teach you how to win at Blood Rage. Blood Rage has been winning lots of awards like Game of the Year and so on, and there's good reasons for that. It's a great game. It can be played between 2 and 5 players, and it's ideal when your GM or some of your players can't turn up, or if you just love board games. It's a great board game. However, a lot of people think it's an area denial game.
It's certainly true that during the game you might get control of certain areas for some period of time, and that's particularly useful when it's an area like Yggdrasil that has a lot of resources. But that's the key word, it's resources. In the game you have 3 clan stats, your rage, your axes and your horns, and you raise these during the course of the game.
And it's in managing these resources that you win the game. So let's go through it step by step, and I'll teach you why I've never been defeated at this game. Now the goal of the game is to score as much glory as possible, which is tracked with these counters by going around the edge of the board. To win the game, you will need to lap a complete circumference of the board in order to score more points than your opponents. If you do it well enough, you should be able to score over 150 points.
Which means by the end of the game, these counters want to be maxed, or as close to max as you can get.
The trick, of course, is how do we get there? Well, Blood Rage is broken down into 3 ages.
As the game plays through the first age, your tactics are going to need to evolve into the second stage and the third age. So let's look at the first age. Your goal here is to build up your rage, and you need to be looking to get to at least 8, ideally more.
Critically, you want to have more rage than your opponents if you possibly can. Now, a lot of people realise that rage is very important in the first age already. The problem is, they don't know how to accomplish it. So, let's dig in deep to how to dominate rage in Blood Rage.
Here we are set up for a 5-player game, and we have rage counters here, here and here. Now people who've played Blood Rage should already know that these could be in any village, they do move around. Importantly, in a 3-player game, these rage counters might not even be on the board. And I've had that before, where the only rage on the board was in Yggdrasil, the central land where the big tree of life or whatever they believe, not sure. Anyway, you get rage, axes and horns if you manage to pillage Yggdrasil.
So in the first stage, your goal is to try and dominate those rage places as much as you possibly can, denying them to your opponents, and if you can, always try to take Yggdrasil. So how do we ensure victory? Well, that requires a little bit of finesse, something I call rage efficiency.
You see, in Blood Rage, every action you take will cost you rage. Invading, which is moving a character onto the board, costs you 1 rage. However, your leader can do this for free, so always start with your leader. In the first age, you begin with just 6 rage, and it's not really enough for the second age. You definitely need more. So there's a couple of cards which are just instant no-brainers. If you see them, take them straight away during the draw. That's Shaman cards and the Dwarf Chieftain cards. The second one here only comes into play in a 5+ player game. Likewise, the second Shaman only comes in a 4 or more player game. But these characters cost nothing to invade. That makes them really efficient. They're free.
And this is what I mean by rage efficiency. If you can do something that costs you nothing, do it.
There are a couple of cards that are good to get, particularly Frigga's Succor. This is one that whenever you invade with one of your soldiers, you can invade with an additional soldier for free. Again, it's rage efficient. Frigga's Charm is quite useful because it means any future upgrades do cost you less, and it's a free-to-play card, so it's well worth having. Loki's Blessing's an outside bet in a 4 or more player game. If you lose a battle, you may invade that province with a warrior for free. So whilst it really won't do much for you in the first age, it does give you a little bit of presence there for the second age, so that if you missed your chance at Yggdrasil, you can maybe get a head start on the second age. Now for some cards to avoid. The first one is Lord of Hammers. If you successfully pillage with your leader, you may move him to an adjacent province. It's not really much of a bonus and it costs 3 rage. This is simply too expensive for the first age when you only have 6 rage. The Mountain Giant. I cost too much. The Sea Serpent. I cost too much and I can't even move around the board. Another useful card that you might come across is Brothers in Arms, and I mention this now because it's not that useful in the first age. It's each pair of your warriors in a province is worth 3 total strength, and it costs 1 rage. However, there are stronger versions of this card later on, and in the first stage you won't be using very many warriors because ideally you'll be invading with shaman, your leaders, or dwarven chieftains.
So at the end of all of that, hopefully you've got sufficient force to fight for and take some of the rage counters on the board, as many as possible. But what if you don't capture those rage places on the board, those locations? You need a plan B. Always have a plan B, and that's where quests come in. Quests allow you to raise any one clan stat of your choice, and they give you glory. So it's always good to do a couple of quests in every age of the game. Particularly Yggdrasil, because Yggdrasil should always be part of your game plan. In the second age, the options available to you are going to be down to how you did in the first age.
If you've not managed to acquire any rage at all, then you're going to have to stay on a rage-efficient strategy. If, however, you have managed to get your rage up some, it's now time to think about getting a point or 2 on horns. I usually go for about 5 here if I can in the second age, just because it's really useful to be able to put more than 4 models down on the board once the board started to get a bit more busy. But now is the time to, in this age, look at topping up our axes so we gain more glory. Because when we look at the score from the first age, we see that the numbers are still really low, and that's why glory just isn't important at all in the first age. So now we're looking at getting our axes up, getting 1 point or perhaps 2 onto horns, and then everything else onto rage. So these are the key cards to be looking out for in this age. Firstly, we should be avoiding Expert in Arms unless our rage is already in the 9 or 12 range, because it now would cost 2 rage to bring a warrior into battle, and that's quite expensive. A better option is a card like this, Tyr's Challenge. After you invade a province, you may pay 2 rage to immediately try to pillage it. If you're going for rage efficiency, then this isn't an ideal card, but it's a good one to go for if you're in that 8+ rage range. Other cards to play if you're on good rage. If you've got somebody dominating the board with a large warrior army, the Wolfman is good, but it is expensive. It negates the strength of any non-monster in the battle. So it's a good way to break up somebody who's dominating Yggdrasil. But it is an expensive card. This is why you want your rage up in the first age, for things like this, to give yourself these kind of options. The Valkyrie is another one that can be useful, but it's pretty much costed right. It's 2 rage. So it's a relatively expensive card to play. If you've done well in the first age with your rage, then it's worth considering. The Fire Giant is a very expensive card, and I usually avoid this like the plague. I would only take the Fire Giant if I was on 12 rage after the first age. However, it's a really expensive card, and usually if there's a lot of warriors in one place, it's typically Yggdrasil, which you can't invade, unless you use the Dark Elf. Now the Dark Elf is particularly useful because not only is it a cheap card, it can invade Yggdrasil, and in Yggdrasil it has a strength of 3. So this is a great way to subvert someone's Yggdrasil plans. However, if the army that is in Yggdrasil can't be disrupted by a 3-point monster, then consider how you're going to get enough strength there. If you can't do it because they've got 4, 5, 6 or more strength in Yggdrasil already and you haven't got a good battle card, then the Dark Elf becomes
effectively useless in breaking that. It's really useful if you're already in Yggdrasil, and it's really useful if some other mechanism is used to break up Yggdrasil, and then you can pop in there with a strength 3 character that only costs you 1 rage. Lord of Axes is a particularly useful card if you've done well with your rage on the first age. If you successfully pillage with your leader, raise one of your clan stats by 1. This is worth doing if you've got your rage in the 8 or 9 plus range. If you're using a lot of monsters, then Frigga's Protection is really useful. It's a free upgrade, and you may pay 1 rage to prevent a figure of your force from being destroyed, so that can protect your expensive models. Of course, Shamans are always useful, and a few more Shaman cards are available in the second age. When going through the draw for the second age, you need to consider your strategy for breaking up any strong formations on the board. And in this case, we've finished our first age relatively open. There aren't any large forces moving around. But it's worth trying to preempt your opponents. Here we see that the Wild Boar player has 5 figures of strength 2 that can be played for no rage cost. Not only that, they have a rage of 8. This is a player who's going to be moving long after we've finished moving, and that affects our strategy. That means we've got to play to hold, that we can't leave territories open with spaces to move into for that player to come along and kill us after we've put ourselves in position to complete a quest. We need to make sure that that player's ability to keep on moving after we've completed our strategy doesn't destroy our strategy. The Raven player here has the classic problem of an expensive monster from the first age. Fenrir, who costs 2, died. So it's now going to cost another 2 to get that monster to invade again. So after our first age, a number of the players are in a strong position, and some are really, well, they've lost. The Serpent player here has no clan stats at all. They've almost certainly lost this game already. The Bear clan has a rage of 8, having pushed it up by 2, and 1 horn. They're in a reasonable position to, if they do well enough in the second age, they could win this. It doesn't matter that they're trailing on points near the back here. The Wolf player has put their rage up by 1 and their axe is up by 1. They're in a weak position and going to need a really good second age to recover this. The Ram player has gained a rage of 2 and a horns of 1. That's a reasonably strong position to be in. The Raven player has gained 2 rage, but their key clan upgrade is going to have to be bought and paid for again. They're not in that strong a position, despite leading on points. The Wild Boar player, however, is in a really strong position. Although their rage is only up by 2, they've got an incredibly rage-efficient play lined up. What they need now is some battle cards so they can actually use this force. Board positioning is also important. We can see here that the Bear player, the brown bases, they're in position to easily take a rage point. They're also likely to get a horn point. They might even march across to ensure that happens. The green player is probably going to get this horn. The red player may or may not get that axe. So the axe, of course, being quite important in this stage of the game. Yggdrasil, in this case, is still open for anyone. But quite often, you'll find a large army parked on Yggdrasil at the end of the first age, and it's important to figure out how you're going to deal with that army if it isn't yours. And of course, ideally it is. As we enter the third and final age of the game, the key now is maxing out all of your stats. Your clan cards have 60 points available when you max out the stats. And when we look at the points that are scored so far, it's still relatively minor. Even if there were fewer players in the game and they'd each scored more points than they have in this particular example game, then 60 points is still a huge leap. If you don't max out your stats for the plus 20 glory and another player does, odds are you're going to lose. Because as you see here, the difference between our top player and our bottom player is 21 points. The key to this is constant questing, because quests allow you to raise the stat of your choice, as opposed to pillaging,
which often you're now, at this stage of the game, you're victim to the disposition of the board, so you can't necessarily get to pillage the villages you want to pillage. And that's a problem in the second age as well, really. But in the third age, it's now almost impossible to target the particular pieces you want. There are, however, a few cards that can really help in the third age. One of my favourites for a high score at the end is Odin's Throne. This doubles the glory award for any quest you complete. That can be a game winner. If you can get Odin's Throne along with 3 or 4 quests, you can pretty much ignore maxing your stats. Lord of Spears is a fairly expensive card, although by now you should have 9 to 12 rage, and you'll be using a lot less rage bringing monsters into the board because the board will have so much other stuff on it. With the Lord of Spears, if you successfully pillage with your leader, you raise all of your clan stats by 1. That's like every space being Yggdrasil. It's totally worth the 3 points. Frigga's Sacrifice is a really useful one. As an action, you may destroy 2 of your figures to raise one of your clan stats by 1. It's a cheap card, it comes in a 3+ player game, and it does enable you to top off and score more points where you otherwise wouldn't. The Master in Arms cards are particularly useful at this stage of the game. Each pair of your warriors in a province is now worth a total of 6, but of course they cost the same to invade. They still only cost you 1 point because you've avoided upgrading them. And if you've still got Frigga's Succor from the first age, which is a great card to have, that means every time you invade with one of your warriors, you get an additional warrior as well. That means any time you invade and there's 2 spaces on the board, your 1 point of rage is now worth 6. A fairly useful card at this stage is the Mystic Troll. Your figures invade the monster's province for free. Get the Mystic Troll in a territory that has a number of empty villages or into Yggdrasil, and for that 2 rage, you can build a formidable army. Frigga's Domain is quite useful. It allows you to recover any model that's died from Valhalla for 1 rage. So if you lose a key monster, you can bring it back. Soldier of Hell is useful for anyone who's still struggling for rage at this point in the game. It has a strength of 3 and costs no rage to invade. The Valor Witch is quite a useful card if Yggdrasil isn't being dominated by an all-powerful force. It allows you to skirt around the outsides with a little force with a strength 3 character, and any time that she does die, she just ends up in Yggdrasil. So this is a really useful character to be harassing the outer territories with. Lastly, and this is expensive, but if you've got the rage but you haven't got your other clan stats up, the Frost Giant is useful, particularly in Yggdrasil. If you successfully pillage with this monster, gain the pillage reward again. So let's have a look how our clans are doing. The Wild Boar clan, which had all of the free pieces to invade with, actually struggled a little bit because the board's too full, because I'm using 6 players in a 5-player game, just because I wanted loads of models on the board to make it look good for the video. However, they have improved their clan stats. They're now bordering on gaining glory. The Bear clan have managed to max out their rage, and their axes and horns are well on the way, so they're in a slightly stronger position than the last team, and they're looking good now for the win. They just need to max out these points. The Serpent clan fought hard to raise their rage as their stats were on minimum last time, and they've managed to do that, getting up to 9 rage on the track, but they've only just made a dent in their axes and horns. The Wolf clan are very solidly just below the point threshold on all of their clan stats. Meanwhile, the Ram clan have got their rage up to 9 and their horns up to 6, but they're nowhere on their axes. So who would I favour now? It has to be the team with the most axes and the most overall clan stats. But of course, quests can turn that around, especially if you get the Odin card. As for the Raven clan, well, that's really not looking so good at all. I think we've lost this time. So let's take stock. The Serpent player, who I ruled out at the end of the first age because their stats were on minimum, actually had a really good second and third age, and they're actually leading on the scoring as we finish the third age. Of course, we haven't yet counted quests and Valhalla, or Ragnarok, or the bonus points for the stats. And the Raven clan, who I ruled out at the end of the second age, for a long time was second on points, though currently here they're third. So now it's all going to be down to quests and stats, and we'll see how important those are, as this top score of 50 will become irrelevant. So firstly, let's do the quests. The Raven player had none, so they're stuck in second position. The Serpent player had 2, which was the yellow domain, which they have just over here, well and truly conquered. And that gives them 9, putting them on 59, and another stat boost. Well, it's a bit irrelevant at this point, unfortunately. Their second plan to take Yggdrasil failed at the last moment and made a bit of a tactical error. Blew my last rage point too soon, so I couldn't move over one of the models into Yggdrasil. The Bear clan managed to double up the blue quest, scoring them 18 points and 2 stat boosts, bringing them on 52 points and making one of their plus 10 stats go to plus 20. The Wild Boar clan went for Valhalla. This they well and truly completed, so they gain 10 points from that and 11 points from the quest. Let's just do the quest points right now. So that currently puts them in third place. The Raven clan conquered Gimli, but that was an Era 2 quest that's only 7 points. But they're now joint first. The Ram clan were attempting 3 quests. They won here thanks to their ship. That's 9 points. So right from last place here, 9 points. They didn't manage to get Yggdrasil, and they didn't quite manage to get a yellow province because of the ships here. So at the end of all the quests, the Serpents are still leading with the Raven clans. These were the points leaders through the second and third age because they were winning all the battles. And as we can see, the rest are all trailing behind. Now let's add the points for their stats. The Wolf clan managed plus 30. Puts them at the moment in the lead. The Serpent clan managed only 10 points, so they jump back in front. The Bear clan, however, managed 50 points, and they are now a long way ahead. The Wild Boar clan managed 30 points. They're currently trailing in last place, and now they're up to here, so it doesn't look like they did enough at all. Even though they were my favourites at the end of the first age, I thought they were going to take it. The Raven clan manages just 10 points, putting them joint second place with the Serpent clan, and the Ram clan managed 20 points, so they just bring up the rear. So quite a low scoring game, this one, but as you can see, what took it was absolutely the stats. Oh, nearly, I forgot about Ragnarok and Valhalla. One of the players' strategies depended on that. So Ragnarok destroys Angeroda, which puts them into second place. But importantly, the Wild Boar clan, with Loki's Eminence and Loki's Wrath, they get between them 5 points for each model in Valhalla. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. That's 35 points. Taking them from 50 to 85. Just 1 point off the win. The Bear clan's solid 50 points took them through to win the game. So that's how you win at Blood Rage. Max your stats, get them as close to the top as possible, and do the quests. The quests are great because not only do they give you glory points, and quite a lot of them, but they also allow you to raise a clan stat. Look for cards that allow you to raise clan stats when you're able to play them or make use of them. And look at the beginning of the game to be very efficient with your rage. Look for the cards that don't cost anything, as opposed to the big monsters.